I don't remember much about the night I collapsed, just fragments. The sterile scent of antiseptic, the weight of machines breathing for me, and the haunting silence of my wife's absence when I woke. They said it was viral myocarditis. Suddenly, aggressive, the kind of thing that picks its victims randomly and then watches them break down from the inside. But for me, the illness was never the scariest part. It was the silence that followed. I remember gripping the hospital sheet with trembling fingers, barely strong enough to lift my hand when the nurse first asked about my emergency contact. "Your wife," she said, "hasn't visited in 2 days." That statement hit harder than the diagnosis. In sickness and in health. That vow echoed in my skull like a cruel joke. The ring on my fingers suddenly felt like a shackle. We'd been married 3 years. Jessica and I weren't perfect, but we had the kind of relationship that looked stable from the outside. We shared Spotify playlists, weekend grocery routines, even matching mugs, king and queen. The kind of mundane intimacy that lulls you into believing betrayal isn't an option. But something had been shifting. Just before I collapsed, Jessica had grown distracted. She flinched at random calls, turned her phone face down during dinner, and started sleeping with earbuds in. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd smile too fast and say, "Work." I believed her, like an idiot, because that's what trust does. It blinds you, not because you're naive, but because you want so desperately for it not to be broken. Lying in that hospital bed, wires taped to my chest, I replayed every moment, every hint I'd ignored. Like when she insisted on separate bank accounts, or when she booked that solo wellness retreat in the mountains last month. And the most haunting memory of all, her final words before I passed out, whispered in a rush, "Don't worry, I'll handle everything." She handled it, all right. When I finally gathered the strength to check my phone, her name wasn't in my missed calls. Just one message, 2 days old. "I need time, please don't make this harder." Attached to it was a photo, blurry, careless, but unmistakable. Her, in a dimly lit bar. And across from her, a man I recognized instantly, Ethan. Her ex, the one she told me she had blocked. I lay there, tubes running through my veins, chest caving in from more than just the virus. Betrayal doesn't knock on the door. It kicks it in when you're weakest. And now, as the morphine dulled my heartbeat, I realized something deeper than pain. I wasn't just sick. I'd been discarded. But Jessica forgot one thing. I don't die quietly. The doctors warned me not to get agitated. My heart couldn't take it. But how do you stay calm when your life is unraveling faster than your body can recover? I kept rereading Jessica's text, dissecting it like a puzzle that refused to solve itself. I need time. Time for what? To catch up with an ex you promised was ancient history? To resample a relationship you once said made you feel small? There was no mention of love, no apology, not even a hollow excuse, just cowardice hiding behind polite vagueness. And I couldn't even confront her. I was too weak to stand, let alone scream. Over the next few days, I became obsessive. I hoarded every ounce of energy I had just to hold my phone. I scrolled through old photos of us, trying to identify when her smile started to fade. I read our chat history backward, from end to beginning, searching for cracks I'd missed. And then I made the mistake of opening our shared calendar. Her wellness retreat? It had been scheduled the same weekend Ethan had flown in for his company's tech expo, confirmed with a public LinkedIn post I found after some basic digging. I zoomed in on his picture, the one with the smug grin and a lanyard around his neck. That same grin in the photo she'd sent. She didn't even bother to crop him out. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was methodical. Jessica had used my illness as an escape hatch. While I clung to life, she stepped back into the arms of a man who'd once broken her. Why? Nostalgia? Closure? Or was I just a comfortable placeholder while she made up her mind? I thought back to something she'd said 6 months earlier, after a dinner party with friends. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't settled." I'd laughed it off at the time, thinking she was joking, but now the memory burned. The next day, my friend Marcus visited. He was the first person I dared show the photo to. He stared at it, jaw tight. You want me to find out where they are? I nodded slowly. Marcus had always been the fixer, the kind of guy who could dig up anything with just a name and a city. A former military analyst turned private risk consultant. If Jessica thought she could disappear into some nostalgic fantasy without consequence, she clearly forgot I had friends who understood surveillance better than sentiment. While he worked, I played my part. The good patient. Physical therapy, nutritional shakes, sleepless nights. I trained my mind while my body slowly caught up. 3 days later, Marcus returned with a smirk and a flash drive. "Got something for you," he said, plugging it into my tablet. "You're not gonna like it." What appeared on screen wasn't just disturbing, it was calculated. Photos, time-stamped. Jessica and Ethan, hand in hand at the same coffee shop 2 blocks from our apartment. Multiple dates, not new. Some were from before I got sick. And then the emails. She hadn't logged out of her old shared account. Rookie mistake. Marcus had pulled everything. He doesn't even notice when I come home late anymore. He's so distracted. I think I could leave, and he wouldn't even chase me. You were always the one. I don't know why I settled. He was just easy. He's in the hospital now. I feel horrible, but maybe this is the sign I needed to leave. I can't keep pretending. Each message felt like a stab to the gut, but the worst one came with an attachment labeled prenupdraft.x. I opened it, fingers shaking. She was planning to leave me, not just emotionally, financially, strategically. She'd consulted a lawyer 3 weeks before my collapse. She was preparing to walk away with what she could, rewriting history before it had a chance to catch up with her. And me? I was the dying man in the narrative she was crafting, the tragic husband she had to let go for her own mental health. She wasn't just abandoning me, she was repackaging herself as a survivor of a failed marriage. Suddenly, my mind quieted. Rage has a strange way of clarifying things. Jessica thought she'd chosen the right time to leave, when I was too weak to retaliate, too broken to fight back. She thought she could ghost me into a soft narrative where she came out as the brave heroine who had no choice. But now I had the choice. I knew everything I needed to know, and more importantly, I knew who she really was. This wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal wrapped in strategic apathy. She didn't run to Ethan in a moment of passion. She had planned an exit, and now so would I. But mine would be the kind you never saw coming. Recovery gave me something unexpected. Time. Time to think, to sharpen, to rehearse revenge, not in the form of rage, but architecture. I wasn't going to confront Jessica, not yet, not as the broken man she left behind. I would build myself up brick by quiet brick until she wouldn't even recognize the man she tried to discard. First, I pretended to play dumb. I sent her a brief message. "Hope you're okay. Still in the hospital. Miss you." She replied 2 days later. "I just need space right now. This has been hard on both of us." "Both of us," she said. I almost laughed, but that message told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't told anyone what she'd done. She was still playing the part of the grieving wife to her friends and family. Perfect. I began therapy, not just physical, but psychological. I asked my doctor to refer me to a trauma counselor. What Jessica had done wasn't just a betrayal, it was a surgical dismantling of my identity. I needed to understand how someone I trusted could become a stranger. The sessions were brutal, but they made me smarter, sharper, less sentimental. "You're not healing from a breakup," my therapist Dana said in one session. "You're detoxing from illusion. That's what hurts most, the version of her that never existed." The truth landed with such surgical precision, it almost knocked the breath out of me. By the 3rd week, I was walking again, slowly, but upright. With every unsteady step, I imagined Jessica's face when she would see me, not as the fragile man in a hospital gown, but as something far more dangerous. A man who survived the fire she lit and walked out holding the matchbook. Marcus and I worked quietly. He helped me collect documentation, Jessica's emails, the timeline of her affair, even surveillance footage from a friend's shop near the coffee place where she met Ethan. Every detail was cataloged. I wasn't going to use the truth recklessly. I was going to time it like a sniper. Step one was the financial angle. Jessica thought she'd beat me to the lawyers, but she underestimated how much she'd revealed in writing. Thanks to Marcus's contacts, I met with a top-tier divorce attorney who specialized in optics-based cases. Legal strategy guided by public perception. She made a tactical error, the lawyer told me after reviewing the file. Emotionally, yes, but also legally. The preemptive prenup, the admission of infidelity during a critical illness, the paper trail, it makes her case radioactive. I didn't want money, I wanted narrative control, because the real war wasn't in courtrooms. It was in how the story would be told. I'd kept quiet for 4 weeks. No public mention of our separation. No social media posts. I let her settle into the comfort of secrecy, thinking she was safe, thinking I was still in recovery. Then I made my first move. I threw a party. Technically, it was a recovery celebration. I invited friends, colleagues, and neighbors, people who knew us as a couple, and I made sure Jessica found out through the one mutual friend she still occasionally checked in with, Carla. She's confused, Carla told me after passing along the invite. She didn't think you were ready for something like this. She's welcome to come, I said, smiling. Of course. She wouldn't come, I knew. She wouldn't dare face the people she'd lied to, but she'd hear about it. She'd wonder how I was suddenly so composed, so socially intact. I posted nothing, just let the story spread organically. Photos of me smiling, laughing, standing strong. The comments rolled in. So glad to see you're doing better. Where's Jessica? Hope everything's okay? Wow, you look great. Total transformation. She would see them. That was the point. Step 2 came the following week. Marcus reached out to Ethan, casually, strategically, through an anonymous email account linked to a burner number. Does Jessica know about your previous non-disclosure breach at Apex Tech? Just curious, because someone does. Ethan didn't respond, but 2 days later, Jessica called me, the first time in over a month. Hey, she said, voice soft. I heard you had a party. I did, I replied flatly. It was a good night. Long pause. I just wanted to check on you. You seem better. I am. Another pause. This one felt longer. She was fishing, trying to gauge whether I knew, whether the floor under her feet was stable or about to give way. I've been thinking, she finally said. Maybe we should talk. Clear the air. We will, I said calmly. Soon. She didn't know how to respond to that. I could hear it in her silence. She was expecting either anger or begging, but I gave her ambiguity, a weapon she didn't know how to hold. After we hung up, I sent her an envelope. Inside were 3 things. A printed copy of her email to Ethan, where she mentioned leaving me while I was too sick to notice. A photo of them together outside our apartment, time-stamped. A sticky note. Let's not insult each other's intelligence anymore. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because the next morning I got a call from a mutual friend, Liza. Jessica's freaking out, she said. She thinks someone's blackmailing her. She said Ethan's getting cold feet. Perfect. I wanted her to spiral, not because I enjoyed her pain, but because it meant she was vulnerable. And people only reflect when they're vulnerable. It was never about revenge as cruelty. It was about symmetry. She left me to die while chasing comfort. I wanted her to feel what it was like to lose control when she thought she had it all. The final part of my plan came into place during our eventual meeting. Neutral ground, a rooftop cafe she once loved. I arrived first, sat where the sun would light my face, make me look stronger, healthier, untouchable. She showed up in a trench coat and big sunglasses, like she was auditioning for a role she couldn't quite remember how to play. You look good, she said cautiously. I know. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she took off her glasses, revealing red eyes, tired eyes, not from grief, from panic. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why not just divorce me and move on? Because you didn't divorce me, I said calmly. You abandoned me. There's a difference. I didn't know what to do. You were so sick and I... No, I cut in. Don't rewrite it now. You left. You lied. You planned it while I was dying. Tears welled in her eyes. Real or not, I didn't care anymore. Are you going to destroy me? No, I said. I'm going to set the record straight. I handed her another envelope, this one thinner. Inside is a statement, I told her. It says you made a mistake, that you had a moment of weakness, that you were overwhelmed. Nothing vile, just honest enough to hurt. And if I don't sign it, I release everything, publicly, emails, photos, the works. You'll be known not as the woman who left, but the one who planned her exit from a hospital bed. She looked at me stunned. I could see it in her expression. Some twisted part of her had still believed I'd beg her back, or at least give her the dignity of a quiet ending. But dignity has to be earned. She signed it, not because she wanted to, but because she knew who I had become. It was never about the signature. It was about the silence that followed. Jessica vanished from public view after that cafe meeting, deactivated her social media, ghosted our mutual friends. From the outside, it might have looked like grief or shame, but I knew better. She was reeling, because for the first time in our marriage, I had written the rules, and she had no script. But I wasn't done. The statement she signed, I never released it. Not directly. Instead, I used it to open a door I'd been quietly building, an opportunity to speak, unfiltered, on a national podcast. The Second Life Project has been gaining traction, stories about survival, rebirth, the ugly middle chapters people don't post online. I pitched them anonymously, framing my story not as gossip, but as transformation. They said yes. The host, Natalie Reese, was known for her piercing empathy. When we spoke in the studio, I didn't name Jessica or Ethan. I didn't even call them wife and best friend. I called them symbols, shadows, echoes of what we think we need when we're at our weakest. I talked about what betrayal feels like when you can't even stand on your own 2 feet, about the indignity of being disposable when you're at your most vulnerable, and about how clarity sometimes grows in the wreckage left by people who love you conditionally. Natalie paused after we finished recording. Her eyes were glassy. You didn't come here for revenge, did you? No, I said. I came here to end a story so I could start a new one. The episode dropped a week later, and it exploded. The anonymity made it worse for Jessica. Everyone started guessing. Mutuals were texting me things like, "This has to be you, right? It sounds just like what happened." People don't need names when the details hit too close. They connect dots on instinct. What came next wasn't rage, it was controlled. Because the narrative was now mine. It was a masterclass in soft destruction. Jessica had buried herself socially. Ethan had vanished after a quiet, internal inquiry at his firm. No firings, but I knew he'd never be promoted again. And I became the man people quietly rooted for. But the real pivot came 3 weeks after the podcast. I received a letter, not an email, not a text, a handwritten, trembling letter from Jessica. I've listened to the episode 3 times. I knew it was you the moment you spoke. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know something. I wasn't in love with Ethan. I just needed someone who didn't see me as fragile. I see now I became the very thing I hated. Weak, cowardly. You were sick, and I used it to escape a mirror I wasn't ready to face. You didn't destroy me. You showed me who I am. And it hurts more than any revenge ever could. It should have satisfied me. It didn't. Because by then, I realized something. This story was never about her, or even Ethan. They were symptoms. The real betrayal had been mine against myself. The version of me that tolerated erosion disguised as love, that lets devotion silence intuition, that gave someone the permission to rewrite my worth based on her loneliness. Jessica's collapse wasn't my victory. My freedom was. The final step of my transformation wasn't a press release, a confrontation, or a gloating phone call. It was a visit to the hospital, not as a patient this time, but as a speaker. Dana, my therapist, had recommended me to lead a recovery talk for people coming out of medical trauma, survivors who had not only lost parts of their bodies, but relationships, dignity, stability. I stood before 15 people in wheelchairs with oxygen tubes and scarred arms, and I told them what no doctor ever did. Survival doesn't just mean your heart kept beating. It means you reclaimed your right to write your own ending. Someone cried, then someone clapped. I walked off that stage lighter than I'd ever felt. That night, as I lay in bed, my bed, in a place I chose, filled with furniture I bought with intention, I allowed myself to feel it fully. Not triumph, not vengeance, peace. The morning light in this apartment hits differently. Not softer, not warmer, just honest. The kind of light that doesn't hide the dust on your floor or the wrinkles around your eyes. It exposes, but it doesn't accuse. That's what I needed. Truth without judgment. After everything, I'd earned that kind of light. It's been 7 months since Jessica walked out, 5 since I told my story, and 3 since I started living, really living, without needing to look back. The old version of me, the man gripping onto his wife's hand in that hospital bed, pleading through a ventilator for her to stay, he died. Not because of her betrayal, but because he believed he deserved it. I've thought about that man often, not with shame anymore, with compassion. He loved fully, recklessly, and beautifully. He wasn't weak. He was unfinished. But he wouldn't survive in this life I'm building now. Some mornings I still wake up wondering what I could have done differently. Whether there was a precise moment when I lost her, not in body, but in soul. Maybe it was the slow fade of touch, the silence between texts, the way she looked at her phone like it contained more life than I ever could. But I don't linger there anymore, because every maybe is a chain, and I've been breaking them one by one. Dana calls it emotional decoupling. I call it peace. I've started working with a foundation that helps critically ill patients navigate post-recovery life. Logistics, emotional rebuilding, career redirection. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm helping others do what I barely survived myself. But that's the point. They don't want heroes. They want witnesses. There's a woman I met there, Sandra, mid-30s, breast cancer survivor, recently divorced. Her husband had fallen in love with her nurse during chemo. When she told me her story, I didn't flinch. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, I know. They always leave when they think you're not coming back." She laughed through tears. Exactly, like they're making the brave decision to move on while you're still bleeding. We've talked more since then, not romantically, not yet, maybe never, but with a shared reverence for honesty. We don't play games. We ask real questions. We sit in real silence. And when we speak, it's like neither of us is trying to sell a version of ourselves we don't believe in anymore. I saw Jessica once, 2 weeks ago, at the pharmacy. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired, not devastated, not ruined, just smaller, as if the world had finally matched the size of her truth. She saw me. I froze, then looked down at her basket like it held answers. I nodded, just once, and walked past. There was nothing left to say. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her tears. I didn't even need her to see how well I was doing, because my healing didn't come from proving anything to her. It came from no longer needing to. Ethan, I never heard from him again. He became a whisper in my past, a cautionary footnote in the chapter about trusting the wrong people. I don't wish him harm. I don't wish him well. I simply don't think of him. And that's a different kind of freedom, the kind where revenge isn't silence, it's indifference. There's a photo on my desk now, not of Jessica, not of anyone else. It's me, lying in that hospital bed, tubes in my nose, eyes half open. Dana took it on the 3rd day I started breathing unassisted. I hated her for it at the time, but now I get it. It's not a picture of weakness. It's a picture of origin. The man who rose from that bed isn't angry anymore. He's not waiting for an apology or validation or even love. He's writing again. Articles, podcasts, sometimes just journal entries. Not because he's searching, but because his voice finally belongs to him. They say betrayal redefines you. That's not true. Betrayal reveals what you buried to be loved. And healing? Healing is when you stop burying it. So here I am, unburied, unashamed, and finally undeniably mine. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.